You're listening to 102.9 WFPRLP, Franklin Public Radio.
Duly scheduled meeting of the Franklin Zoning Board of Appeals will come to order. This meeting is being recorded and televised. The listing of matters are those reasonably anticipated by the chair, which may be discussed at the meeting. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by law. This meeting will be held via the Zoom platform and in person live at the Town Council chambers. You can log in zoom.us/975-524-90-954. If you're listening to this and you want to do it, just go to the website and you can get that login. You may also join the meeting on your smartphone by calling 1-929-205-6099. For those looking to view the meeting, it can be viewed live at this time on Comcast 9 or Verizon 29. It is also streaming directly from Franklin TV's website. Visit franklin.tv and just click on Town Hall TV channel. Time being 7:30.
All right, our first order of business is to review an application from 55 Milliken Ave, Joseph Newell. Applicant is seeking to construct an addition that converts a one-family home to a two-family home. The building permit is denied without a special permit from the ZBA.
To the chair, I respectfully recuse myself as I am in a butter to both of these projects.
Okay.
So I'll be recusing myself for the evening.
Thank you. The applicant present.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Rick Goodrow with United Consultants Online.
Okay. You didn't get the memo, Rick?
What's that, Mr. Chairman?
That we were meeting live?
I did.
Okay. Go ahead, make your case. You know, there's a lot of people in here. I hope they're not here, all here for you.
I don't think that would be the case, but we will see. The applicant, Mr. Joseph Knoll, is proposing to convert a existing single-family house into a two-family house, basically constructing an in-law apartment with a footprint of approximately 26 feet by 28 feet at the property located at 55 Milliken Ave. We have worked with the contractor and the owner to come up with a plan that would provide for the adequate setbacks on the property as well as the lot coverage to be less than 15%, as we are located in a water resource district. We have provided the board with a site plan as well as a special permit application that's outlined the special permit criteria. I do have the plan available and could bring it up and answer any questions the board may have.
Go ahead, Rick. Casey, you share the screen with me? This is new for us, Rick, so give us a break.
All right. Are you able to see the drawing?
Not yet.
No?
We're working on it, though.
Hold on.
Casey's doing Go ahead, Rick. Why don't you start out? We'll see what happens. We got a plan. We all got a plan. So, if you want to just explain.
All right. How about now, Mr. Chairman?
The screen's changed, but there it is. There you go. Attaboy.
All right. So, as I mentioned, the property is located at 55 Milliken Ave. The existing house is situated here. The proposed addition is hatched out here, 28 feet across the front, 26 feet down the side. A landing with a set of stairs are located to the rear of the property, and a front porch is being added in front of the existing bump out here, as well as the proposed bump out for the building addition. There are wetlands located to the east side of the lot. We have had the wetlands delineated, located, and we have filed for a notice of intent with the Conservation Commission. We have been told by them that they expect that we will not be able to close that hearing until such time as we have gotten a determination from the Board of Appeals. So that that permitting process has been continued to their next meeting. So as I mentioned, we meet the side setback here. We had some adjustments made to the proposed addition to accomplish that, and also to stay out of the existing 20-foot wide sewer easement that runs diagonally through the property. We also proposed, as noted here, a removal of a portion of the existing driveway, and that got us to a lot coverage, as indicated right here, of 14.9%. So that's an overview of the site plan. As I mentioned, we filed the plan as well as a special permit application with the board, and Mr. Newell is seeking to be allowed to convert this existing single-family house into this two-family structure. Thank you.
Rick, just one thing. Why does did they have a reason why they wanted us to finish before they did?
The Conservation Commission indicated that their process now is that they want us to have the permits from the zoning board before they would entertain closing their hearing.
I suppose it'd be a real problem if we wanted their decision before we made a decision. Anyway, Rick, that addition, how many square feet is it?
It's about 1,000 square feet, Mr. Chairman,
Okay.
just a little
So
over.
you're just over the ADU requirement?
Yes,
Because you know with an ADU, you could do it by right.
yes, I do.
Okay.
And that was discussed, and when I say 1,000 square feet, I'm talking about the footprint. There's a second level, so the actual square footage of the structure, including the second level, is above 1,000 square feet. It's a footprint of around 1,000 square feet.
Okay.
Thank you.
You all set?
Yes.
Thank you. Any abutters for Milliken Ave? I'm sure there must be one or two out of this bunch. All right, hearing none, I'll go to the board. Janelle, any questions?
No, my questions were on the square footage and why it wasn't an ADU, and could the Conservation Commission go first? So I think you've answered those.
You say these think the same way.
Yeah,
Great minds think alike.
the houses all along Milliken are very small, but this one, interestingly, when you look at the plan and when you look at the street view, it's set back.
It's way back.
Yeah, so I think it, even though it'll be larger, it still fits in with the character.
Okay. That's it?
That's it.
Megan, any questions? I'm
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
sorry.
Yes, Rick, you said this is gonna be a two-family addition? Or a two-story addition, I'm sorry?
Two stories, yes. They'll have a small second floor, yep.
I did have the opportunity to drive down Milliken today. It's a mix of single-family and mostly two families. There's condos just around the corner from this unit, so I really don't have any other questions. I'm fine with it.
I'm all set with it too, because the house sits back quite a ways, and I can see why, because they got so many units on there, they lucky they can walk out of the yard. But anyway, with that being said, I'll entertain a motion to, Rick, you want to just go over the special permit criteria, please?
Sure.
Okay.
Criteria 1. Proposed project addresses or is consistent with neighborhood or town need. The addition will be utilized for an in-law of the family. This will allow the family to remain in the same residence. Vehicular traffic flow, access and parking, and pedestrian safety are properly addressed. The existing driveway is capable of handling 5 parking spaces, 2 spaces per unit as required by the Franklin zoning bylaw. Additional vehicle trips will be minimal with less than 10 trips per day anticipated. Public roads, drainage, utilities, and other infrastructure are adequate or will be upgraded to accommodate development. The roadway system can accommodate the vehicle trips from the in-law apartment. The site will have less impervious coverage than allowed by the Franklin zoning bylaw. The site will be connected to municipal utilities, including water and sewer. Excuse me. Neighborhood character and social structure will not be negatively impacted. The addition of a family member will not negatively impact the character or social structure of the neighborhood. Number 5, project will not destroy or cause substantial damage to any environmentally significant natural resource, habitat, or feature, or, if it will, proposed mitigation, remediation, replication, or compensatory measures are adequate. The proposed in-law unit will be constructed on an existing developed property and will be located within a wetland buffer zone. A notice of intent has been filed with the Conservation Commission. Number 6, number, height, bulk, location, and siting of buildings and structures will not result in abutting properties being deprived of light or fresh air, circulation, or being exposed to flooding or subjected to excessive noise, odor, light, vibration, or airborne particulates. The proposed in-law unit will have a footprint of approximately 1,000 square feet. The lot structure coverage proposed is below the coverage allowed by the Franklin zoning bylaws. The proposed addition meets or exceeds the town of Franklin setback requirements. The in-law unit will meet the height requirements and will not cause any flooding, excessive noise, odor, light, vibration, or airborne particulates. Number 7, water consumption and sewer use taking into consideration current and projected future local water supply and demand and wastewater treatment capacity will not be excessive. The in-law will result in 2 additional bedrooms being added to the structure. This will result in an increase of approximately 220 gallons per day of water and sewer usage. And that is a summary of the special permit criteria and the applicant's responses. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
interrupt you for a second. Gus Brown, Building Commissioner. I just want to make sure that this special permit, if it's granted, is for a 2-family, not for an in-law.
We don't have a definition of an in-law apartment, so we couldn't do that.
So I just want to make sure it reflects it in the
the.
minutes that it is a 2-family.
That's how it's gonna be voted, a second dwelling unit added to the property. So you could call it a 2-family or family and a half, or whatever you want after that, I guess.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome, thank you. Okay, with all that being said, I guess it's, if nobody has any more questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to close the public hearing. I don't have to call for a roll call vote, so, Janelle?
Yes.
Archie?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to grant a special permit for 55 Milliken Avenue for Joseph Newell to construct an addition that converts a 1-family home to a 2-family home. This building is denied without a special permit. It's shown on a drawing dated February 5th, 2025, entitled Proposed Additional Plan, or Addition Plan, 55 Milliken Ave, Franklin, Mass., and it's drawn up by United Consultants, Inc.
Seconded.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I forgot, I don't have to do roll call, so we can just shout it out. Thank you. Thanks, Rick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and board members. Have a good evening.
Me too.
Hopefully. Oh, this is next one. Where's tonight? You got tonight?
Oh, I got some.
What time is it?
Sure. Well, I just covered
The
it up.
second page, yeah?
That is
No, that's for the, that's April. April 4th.
7:35.
Time being approximately 7:35 PM.
Opening the public hearing for 444 East Central Street by Tag Central LLC. Applicant is seeking a building permit to construct a 264-unit multifamily development. The building permit is denied without a comprehensive permit from the ZBA.
The applicant present,
Yes, good evening.
please identify yourselves.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Edward Cannon, local counsel for the applicant Tag Central LLC, joined tonight by A.J. Alavisos from Tag Central, Carlton Quinn from the engineer, Jeff Dirk is joining us remotely from VAI. Nick Griffin from C3, the architects, is here with us tonight, and Chris Frateroli from Goddard Consulting Wetland Specialist is here with us tonight.
If you could like to move the microphone closer to the camera.
Can you hear me okay? Okay. Go ahead, you might as well do your presentation, then we'll go into some housekeeping. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we could bring, we just have a brief sort of PowerPoint with some slides. May I approach, Mr. Chairman? It's the same thing, just.
Don't come too close, you know, we have an officer around here somewhere. You can see it on the screen. On this part of the book. First. Yeah.
I've done that. Okay. All right. So, Mr. Chairman, this is this one's a friendly 40B. This is through the town's local initiative project bylaw. So we began with the Conservation Commission, which unanimously supported this. Moved to the Planning Board, which unanimously supported this. Went on to the Town Council, which approved this. And now we're here before this board, who has the ultimate say as to what happens with this. But the Town Council vote was voted in June 2024, and since then, the applicant has been developing the project for what is being presented to you here tonight. It's a Class A residential community at the site of the Stobart's Nursery and Farm. Proposed 264 units with 25% affordable units, which is a total of 66 units with a 1, 2, and 3 bedroom mix and 356 parking spaces proposed at a ratio of 1.35 per unit.
Can I get that up on the screen, Gus? Okay.
Should we give it a minute? And
Yeah, try it, see what it does. We're just trying to get it up on the screen so everybody can see what it's talking about, that's all.
Gus.
You're not audio visual.
Perfect. Thanks, Gus.
Boy, Gus.
Pretty face.
So here's the location of the site. It's sort of shaded in tan towards the lower right-hand side of the screen along East Central Street, within walking distance to shopping and the shops along that corridor, as well as but within walking distance of the commuter rail, which is a nice
Not a comedy show, he's just making a presentation. Everybody will have their chance.
So this is an aerial of the site, and you see it's bisected by a wetlands resource, and there's also wetlands areas well to the back, but all the work is, the access is obviously off of 140, and then the proposed units would be on either side, the east and west side of the wetland area that bisects the site, but well back off of Route 140.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. AJ Alavisos with the applicant. Just to give you guys a sense of the existing conditions out there on site, just inherently with the long-time use as a landscaper business, there's been some dilapidation of the property overall. It's currently largely being used as an outdoor storage yard. Just to give you a sense of some of the conditions out there today, we plan to really transform the current state of the property into a high-quality redevelopment project. Beginning from, just to walk you through the site plan a little bit, beginning from East Central Street, main driveway entrance, you're greeted by the clubhouse, a single-story building. We have the pool connected to the clubhouse to the south. The clubhouse houses our interior amenity program, as well as leasing and property management functions and other operational functions. To the south of the site, we programmed our residential buildings. To the left-hand side of the page, which is the west of the stream, we have 2 4-story buildings. Along the stream to the east is another 4-story building, and then we have 2 3-story buildings to the east of that. We use the depth of the site to strategically place the taller residential structures to the south, so that the closest building to the street is a minimum of 415 feet setback from East Central Street. So as you can see, the site is very deep. We take advantage of that real estate by strategically programming the taller buildings to the south, and having the 1-story clubhouse greet you upon arrival as you enter the site. The project is centered on a pretty unique natural amenity, that is the stream, which bisects the site north to south. We have created a walking path network around that stream for residents to utilize and immerse themselves in nature and enjoy the amenity that's the stream. And we also planning to do a pergola seating area and a platform that's seasonal to let people experience this natural feature. Parking is via surface parking lot, 356 spaces. We also have 29 garage detached at-grade bays programmed, which are the dark gray rectangles on plan. If I could turn it over to our architect, Cube 3, Nick Griffin of Cube 3 is here to present the next couple slides.
Thank you, AJ. Just on the site plan, I think one important aspect, AJ, if you can pop back, is kind of our orientation of the buildings. So as AJ mentioned, our clubhouse is up front. That's about 250 feet off the road. That's a single-story amenity building there with pitched vaulted roofs. That's kind of up front, the lower density and lower height along the street. And then we have our buildings for residential buildings tucked in the back, and are for the most part oriented so they're perpendicular to the street. Again, this shows our smaller end of the buildings towards the street. If you pop to the next. So again, you can see the clubhouse here to the kind of top left side of this image. That's our warm entry, our main entry. Drop off, pick up, all there will happen, leasing for both tenants and future tenants. And then in the rear, you'll see the ends of our residential buildings. So the end's really where we started, rather than doing a flat, single gable end residential building as you would normally see for a 3 or 4 story. We did some opposing gables and really broke down the end of this building, not only as the walls, 2 ends step back, but also in, again, height with the opposing gable ends. And then as we go down the length of the building, we continued to do the opposing gables with a few dormers along the edge, both in these vertical rhythms with the balconies and the windows, to really help focus on breaking down the mass and the scale along these buildings. And again, the way they're oriented on site and distributed, it really helps break down, minimizing the viewports to these longer elevations of the buildings. And kind of furthermore, the materials, we've used a color palette here that's more muted, and we've used a blue here, which again harks back to that stream that we've really based this whole project around, that unique amenity of this location. The buildings focus on a base middle top, and again, that built over time, kind of New England style architecture that is for the area. So this is the 4-story building, typical elevations here below this image. But again, that's the overall approach to the design. This is a couple representative images of projects we've worked on, both us as Cube 3, the applicant, and other engineers as well. These do not look exactly like this project would. We pride ourselves in designing each project unique to its location and its community. So this just gives an overall look and feel of the quality that we are determined to provide for the tenants and the location of these projects. I'm going to pass it over to Chris Fratiola now.
Good evening, folks. Chris Frattaroli. I'm a wetland scientist with Goddard Consulting. So as AJ and Nick had mentioned, we're really looking to kind of transform the state of this site. It's been degraded over the decades by nursery and landscape operations, and that's become evident with a variety of fill piles, rusted out vehicles, construction and demolition debris, pretty much all the way up to that stream that we've been talking about. So part of this project is going to be kind of renaturalizing the buffers along the sides of that stream. We're going to be implementing some invasive species management because the site is really a who's who of the invasive plants of North America. So we'll be managing those, replanting with native species to improve habitat value, specifically for the wetland resources. We're also going to be replicating isolated vegetated wetlands along the southern portion, really that southeastern corner of the site. We are also going to be bringing the site into compliance with Mass DEP's stormwater standards. So presently, stormwater sheet flows directly into that stream and the wetland resources, ultimately with no treatment whatsoever, picking up sediment and whatever else along the way. So our project will be fully compliant with those stormwater standards. There'll be reductions in peak runoff flows, improved recharge to groundwater, removal of suspended solids, total phosphorus, those types of things, improving the quality of the water leaving the site. Again, as mentioned, we're implementing some amenities that are really focused on allowing residents to appreciate the natural features on the site. So some walking paths will be mixed in around that stream, as well as some outdoor recreation area. We're also planning to convey almost 2 acres of land to the town at the southern portion of the site that can be set aside and remain in its state. Thank you. Back to AJ.
Thanks, Chris. We, in our LIP review process that we went through prior to getting to the Zoning Board of Appeals level, we coordinated closely with the town and listened and proposed several public benefits even prior to beginning any formal permitting process like we're in now. So a couple of those we listed here in front of the site to connect our property to the numerous retail options to the west. we're proposing to construct a new 175 linear square foot sidewalk and bike shoulder along East Central Street. Encourage walkability from our property. 2 grocery stores are within a quarter of a mile of the property, a quarter to a half a mile of the property. So that's planned. We've also agreed to set aside nearly 2 acres of land as preservation or conservation land for the town in our coordination efforts to date with the Conservation Commission upon their request. We have proposed to prepare an improvement study and optimal traffic signal timing phasing plan to help the town address existing conditions at the King Chestnut Street intersection. So this would be designing associated improvements and helping the town obtaining state grant opportunities for doing those improvements if the town desires to do so. We also are planning to perform traffic signal timing improvements along East Central Street corridor to ease existing conditions. Also replicating isolated vegetated wetlands, as Chris mentioned. So typically the state does not require any replication whatsoever. So typically, many seek waiver relief from this, but we've decided to go ahead and do it. We have also agreed to the Conservation Commission's request to perform and adhere to a restoration plan, which isn't typically required. That just consists of extra measures to further improve the site ecologically and aesthetically. We've also made a significant number of site plan modifications to date in the LIP review process. We relocated a building to the center of the site rather than along the eastern property line to increase the setback. We also reduced that same building's height by about 25%, or 10.5 feet. We increased the buffer shielding in this area as well by redesigning the site plan to prevent disturbance and maintain a buffer area there. We also increased the setback of residential buildings from East Central Street, pushing it further south into the site, resulting in a minimum setback of over 400 feet from the street for all the residential buildings. We've also coordinated closely with the fire department to make sure that they have no further comments on the site plan, including incorporating multiple access and life safety related revisions, which are above and beyond code requirements. Just to give a quick general summary of the redevelopment, the site is an ideal candidate for redevelopment, given the current state of it, the prominent location, benefited by numerous area amenities. It's a great fit for housing. We propose a redevelopment project here to enhance the neighborhood aesthetically and economically. So that's the opportunity. The issue is, or the challenge, is that the current zoning doesn't yield much likelihood for the property to be redeveloped, and it's one of the primary reasons it's sat in its current state for so long. So a lack of demand for the as-of-right uses of the site leaves little opportunity for it to be redeveloped in the future. So this makes a friendly 40B option such as this a key solution for unlocking its potential. Some of the ecological benefits that Chris mentioned earlier are restoring critical wetland buffer protection zones around that stream, improving the health of the wetlands overall, creating amenities that are focused on nature appreciation, removing invasives and replacing them with native species, improving stormwater conditions significantly, and approximately 2 acres of land to be preserved to the town that's located in the south. And a few public benefits just to touch on that I touched on earlier are creating essential affordable housing and rental homes. It's a massive need for any town really in Massachusetts, but at the state level, there's a huge need for affordable housing, especially rental. With a 40B, it offers the town the ability to do what's called local preference, and up to 70% of the affordable housing units can be designated to Franklin locals. Number 3, we propose to build a new sidewalk as well as do some signal retiming efforts and another study to make East Central Street more pedestrian friendly. 4, enhance the neighborhood aesthetically and economically by transforming this existing parcel. And 5, it's estimated to be substantially net fiscally positive for the town based on our fiscal impact consultant's estimates and all of his experience with similar projects such as this. We really appreciate your time. Thank you. And we're here to answer any questions. And thank you for your time.
Okay, we got a couple of housekeeping issues. As you realize we hire peer review, a legal and engineer. One of our peer review, usual peer review people is here, Mr. Attorney Bobowski. Attorney Bobowski, I thought you said you could hear me okay. No. I can't. Attorney Bobowski and the other guy would be Joe Penznola from Hancock Associates. Is there any problems with us hiring those two people? All right, I'll entertain a motion from the board to hire those two people.
So moved.
Peer review. Means whatever they're telling us, these guys are gonna look at it and make sure it's, that it's even halfway true, so.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to hire Attorney Bobowski and Hancock Associates as peer review for this project. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? None.
Who pays for the peer review?
Well, we're getting to that right now. I'm glad you asked. I'm going to entertain a motion that we get $25,000 check from the applicant to pay for the peer review, or at least to start the peer review. If we need any more, we'll get it.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion?
No.
All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? None. Okay. We're just going to run through the board quick. Did you want to say anything, Mark? No. Okay. All right. Megan, any questions or comments?
I guess the only thing I can think of right now, for the the well that's nearby there, is there any way we can have this well periodically tested with a remediation plan? If it does find any.
I think the town tests it quite often.
Okay.
And to be honest with you, I'm not really concerned about the well because the well's up gradient from this property.
Right.
Water flows downhill, it doesn't usually go uphill. Obviously, they could contaminate the ground underneath, but there's been there's 2 car dealerships there with cars in the lots. One's eliminated now. And, so the town periodically tests the water, so I think we're covered on that.
That's great, yeah. No other questions then.
Okay. Janelle?
I have a lot of questions.
That's okay.
All right.
Maybe I'll pay attention to yours before I fall asleep.
Thank you for the presentation and the thorough application. Things that are very appreciative are the attempt to clean up, the intent to clean up the debris and to restore the site. The traffic impact study, the transportation impact study shows, I know that was a concern from a lot of the people that we've heard from, but it shows that there is a negligible amount of additional traffic along that street. And the hope is that the proposed pedestrian and bike improvements and timing on the traffic lights will help that. Locating the 3-story buildings next to the neighborhood is respectful of the scale there, so thank you for that. And even the overall architecture, it takes these 4- and 3-story buildings to a residential scale. In Franklin, I think to be a vibrant community like we want to be, it requires a mix of housing that is single-family and condos and apartments. What that right mix is can shift and change over time. And having something like a friendly 40B arrangement can help us inform what that mix is to make sure we always stay over the threshold so we can be involved in this process. I am questioning the proposed exact use of the multifamily as apartments and not condos, and as apartments only and not mixed use. And so I was wondering if you could speak to those 2 things, to just be proposing an apartment-only development.
Rather than for sale, is that what?
Yeah, those were 2 alternative uses that I could potentially see on this site as for sale. Condo development or with a mixed use that has a commercial component out by the street instead of a clubhouse.
Sure. In terms of for sale, when you say condos, are you talking about a similar sort of project to this, where it's a mid-rise sort of development?
Mid-rise townhouses or individual units? like
Right,
this?
so we are long-term holders, that's our, what we typically like to do. So we prefer to have assets that produce, income over the long term and that we can hold for the long run and be a part of it. So for us, we did look into the for sale condo play. Unfortunately, with the affordable units on condos from per Chapter 40B, it's very challenging to make those financials work because you end up actually losing money on the affordable units. So it's challenging when you reduce your density. Larger units in condos requires some covered parking, increased costs with the finishes. All of those things factor into just not able to make the numbers work, candidly. And it's also not what we do as a development company, so.
Okay, thank you. And on the mixed use?
On the mixed use, there's not much demand for a retail center here. It's pretty deep, set back far down into the site. You want retail along the frontage. The stream bisecting the site also creates challenges with laying that out. It's something, we could potentially explore, maybe a retail pad or something like that in the front of the site. If it's something that is important to you, we could potentially look into that if it's something that the board would like us to.
I know one of the comments from the planning board was to look at resiting even the clubhouse up by the street to help create this pedestrian active street front. Was that looked at?
Yeah, we did look at that, and we responded to that comment in person and in a public meeting, as well as via correspondence. And the reason the clubhouse doesn't work at the front of the site is a couple of different reasons. One is the clubhouse houses all of our interior amenity program, the pool, operational functions where residents get their mail and package delivery, property management. So you want that function central to their residences so that they can walk easily to the clubhouse and bring their packages and mail and pick it up and then go meet with their leasing staff for property management. So you want that central to the residential buildings, which are to the south. That's one reason. Secondly, there is a small portion of the stream that's unculverted near the front of the site, and we have to honor that stream where it is. So it was difficult to get the clubhouse laid out over that small portion that's unculverted. We looked into it from a design standpoint and from a functionality standpoint for the community. It's far better to have it in its current location than along the street. It's also safer because people are going in and out of the clubhouse pretty consistently, so further setback from the street is more desired for that reason. And lastly, it just couldn't make the layout work well with where that non-culverted part of the stream was.
Okay. One of the things we had heard, someone connected us that was supportive of the project but was concerned about people cutting through from the back of the property to adjacent properties, and they were curious about fencing or other security measures.
That's something we can look into further. We'll take that into consideration.
For people to get to the grocery stores, for example, they would take the walking paths out to the front and then along the sidewalks, right?
Correct, yeah. That's precisely why we've proposed to build this sidewalk. There's an area existing where that sidewalk doesn't exist in front of the property. So we'd like to create the new sidewalk for obviously public uses as well, because it's in the public right away, but also to give our residents direct walkability and bikeability to the retail, to downtown Franklin, to the MBTA station, to Town Hall, to all the area amenities that this site benefits from.
Great. Also along the edges of the site, what types of plantings and buffers would you be proposing? Is it just what's in the planting plan, and can you describe that for people, what that would look like when it's filled in?
Yes, I don't have my landscape architect here with me this evening, but I'm happy to relay that comment to him and provide some information.
Okay. I think it's probably fair in saying the more the better, just from what we're hearing from folks. We're also hearing from folks that the adjoining neighborhood has had stormwater challenges in the past. And I don't know if that's been addressed in the stormwater management plan. Is the stormwater management plan only looking internally in the site, or has it considered the local context around it? And maybe that's a question for Gus too, if you know about the issues that have been DPW has been having in that neighborhood next to it.
Do you want him to respond? Gus?
I guess it's a question through you, Chair, to Gus and to the engineer.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to
Go ahead.
Janelle. What neighborhood would you be referring to?
Cook's Farm,
Cook's Farm, okay.
yeah.
I don't know of anything. DPW may be aware of some issues over there, but right now I don't have any knowledge of that.
Okay.
They actually talked about that in one of the Concom meetings about the bridge, something about the water level. That's what they're using as the water level, is the bridge, because if it got as high as the bridge, then it would start to back up again. There's a culvert under the bridge. And they were using the street level, I guess, as the level where they'd have to back up before it would flood into the project. Is that correct, somewhere around it?
Right, yeah, I'm happy to speak to that, and maybe Carlton can add to the sort of stormwater design aspect of it. I do want to just distinguish between a flood event and everyday stormwater. So what you're referring to is how we determined an elevation for the floodplain, which is in and of itself a wetland resource. That it has its own design challenges associated with it that we need to respect and make sure that we don't lose the capacity to store floodwaters. But as far as managing everyday stormwater runoff, that is a component of engineering design that needs to comply with Mass DEP's stormwater standards. And so, we will be complying with those standards set forward by the state. I can't really speak offhand to any impacts or considerations taken to neighboring properties. It's typically outside of the scope of development of a project like this, but I do know it's included at the very least in modeling of existing conditions.
Is it safe to say that all the stormwater on this site is managed to be retained on the site? And
Absolutely.
discharged back into this site, so that it won't be going to the neighboring site and make whatever issues they're having worse?
Right, yes. So all stormwater generated on site, and I'll
Yeah, we'll let our
Carlton-
civil engineer, Carlton Quinn, handle that.
Good evening, Carlton Quinn with Allen and Major Associates. The state has regulations on how stormwater needs to be handled. Franklin also has their own local requirements on how stormwater is handled. We've met those with our stormwater design. We obviously have a peer review to go through to kind of bounce these questions back and forth. We've discussed with the town, the project at length. This topic actually has not come up, other than the floodplain we discussed at the Concom. We were just discussing existing conditions with the Concom, so they have not looked at our stormwater design at all to this point. If there is a comment letter, please forward to us and we'll respond in kind. But nothing specifically has been we haven't been notified specifically of anything from Cooks County, but we are managing our stormwater on site. Will 100% of it be held on site for the 100-year storm? Probably not, but we are managing it to the specifications outlined by the local Franklin regulations and the state regulations.
We've also done a full drainage report, which we're happy to submit for peer review. So we look forward to addressing any comments from peer review and having them review the work we've done to date.
Okay. And saying that it hasn't been noted before, that's why we have these meetings, right? So we
Yeah,
can bring
I'm
it
just
up
saying I
now.
can't address it right now, but we will certainly address it. And 95% of the peer review process we're gonna go through is gonna be around stormwater. That's where most of it generally is, as far as the site goes. So it will be vetted through this process.
Okay, great, thank you. Any sustainable or carbon-free features of the design and proposed project? And maybe it's a question for the architect.
Yeah, I think we're still in, in negotiations and discussions of the full extent, but this will be, up to date on a current sustainability process in the grade A kind of rental local market. So we'll have a number of things that are sustainable in the project. We'll still be, again, putting through design of the specifics. Things will include, Energy Star appliances, and any local and state codes required.
We're happy to prepare a list of that for you.
That would be great. Yeah, we'd like a list of those features. Oh, the preservation land noted at the back of the site, will that be accessible to the general public? And will there be parking there?
I'm not sure what the town has planned for that land. We were asked to set aside some acreage for the from the Conservation Commission, so that's what we've done.
Okay. Not sure. You mentioned that your fiscal consultants modeled that the impact to the town. Is that something that can be shared?
Happy to.
And then is there separate visitor parking, or is that just in the mix of all the parking
That's in the mix of all the parking.
That's okay. All right. Chair, those are my questions for now.
Okay. Archie?
I do have questions, I'm sure I'm gonna have more later.
Well, this is just the first round here, anyway.
I guess
We got a lot of people here, I'm sure they got questions too.
I noticed that the Stobart's building or home is being left on site. What is the frontage that you guys are working with once you split this up?
So Stobart's, you're referring to the single-family home?
To the right of it, yeah.
So it's not technically part of this property, it's a separate parcel. So we're not purchasing that property. We're just purchasing the property that's about 15 acres where the landscape nursery business is. And in terms of the frontage, our civil engineer's double checking what we have there.
The frontage is 274 feet
On your project.
on our project.
Okay.
Past projects that we've done with 40Bs, the fire department's always requested full access around the buildings. I noticed in your proposal you're showing only 3 sides. Why are we not showing 4? Why can you whittle things down to get 4?
We had multiple meetings with the fire department. We made multiple revisions to the site plan in response to those meetings. We provided the latest site plan that you see here, and they had no further comments. They requested 3-sided access, never raised the issue of full access to every side of the building. They requested 3, and that's what we provided.
Can we get a letter from the fire department or request a letter stating that they're okay with this?
Well, whether they're okay with it or not, it's still yet to be seen. They're saying that they're fine with it. I know that the last 2 projects that we did, big projects like this, they're required to be able to drive around the whole building.
Yeah. With a second means of egress.
I'd be curious as to why all of a sudden they changed their minds. Obviously, if you gave them a proposal, they might have said, well, this is good, but, we try to be consistent here with what we do. If this was to be approved, it would probably be approved with the same number of parking spaces, and the access around the buildings is what the last 2 big ones were. So, what's the requirement in stone for parking?
Sorry.
What's the requirement in this zone for parking? I can tell you, it's 2 cars per unit.
How many cars per unit do we have?
1.35, and that's based off of parking demand studies that we've done through national and regional property management companies who manage these properties, some that own, as well as our traffic consultant. And the actual demand utilization ratio of comparable communities and comparable locations are around 1.35 on average. That's what we've provided here. So we've found that to be sufficient for a community such as this. The last thing we'd want to do is underpark a community. That wouldn't bode too well for our business. So we're very confident in the numbers we provided. But we're happy to look into that comment further.
And then I'm looking at the affordable unit. The one-bedroom affordable price for rent is $1,939. Who sets those rates?
That's set by the
Set by the state.
state.
Really?
Yes.
You had mentioned earlier, when asked about maybe possibly doing some sort of condo, and something that you guys don't do, you're more apartment-based and the numbers won't work for you. What is the minimum number of units that you could get in here for this project to work for you?
I'm not sure offhand. I wouldn't be able to answer that question offhand.
So it's not 265 or 264?
I'm not sure. I can't answer that question at this moment. But we've proposed 264. It is a very challenging market to make developments such as this pencil. So we've come in with a project that we are confident we can execute and capitalize on. And that's what we've done.
And the 2 acres that you're bequeathing to the town of Franklin, would it be safe to say that that is going to end up being the floodplain?
No. Carl?
I mean, you're building on either side of this pond, or whatever this is, lake or brook, whatever it is. Really, the only place that I can see the water going is in that area.
So much of the area to the south is wetlands. As for floodplain, I don't know the specific extent of it in relation to the preservation land that we've set aside. So the idea was, this is some land that we're not going to touch as a part of our development. We're happy to deed it to the town if it's something they want, and the Conservation Commission asked us to, so we agreed to.
Is it currently dry there now?
I haven't walked that portion of the property.
Listen, they answered their own question. It's wetlands, and probably can't do anything with it. That's why they want to donate.
Yep. Nice. I think I'm good for now, Mr. Chairman.
All right, can I call you AJ?
Yes, sir.
AJ, Alavisos, correct?
Yes, sir.
You own a Horseman Mall, or is that another part of your family?
It's another part of my family.
Okay, you don't have anything to do with it?
That's my aunt and uncle.
Okay, you don't
Yes.
have anything to do with it?
No,
'Cause
sir, but
I heard one of your presentations one time, I think it was at the council. You said you wanted to build and thing, you know, you got the ideal location at Horseman Plaza. You could have put a couple of buildings out near 140, you could have put a couple of buildings behind the trampoline park. You would have got what you needed there. You already got a light, you already got parking, you got everything you need there, but evidently aunt and uncle didn't want to do it, so.
Yeah, it's not my property.
Okay. Is anybody going to admit this is, I'll admit, that this is probably the most environmentally challenged site that we've ever had to deal with as far as the 40B goes, even giving you all the waivers from the local regulations. So, and I'm sure the wetlands guy probably would agree with that, I would think, but I'm sure he's not going to stick his neck out. But anyway, just so that's said. The reason before the Concom now isn't because you went in with this plan, this grand plan of what you want to do. Is that the reason you're there, or is it there because you have to provide a restoration plan to the DEP? What was the onus of going to the Conservation Commission already?
We have to file a notice of intent to get an order of conditions approved because of the on-site wetlands, and we're within the buffer zone.
If you didn't do anything with the site, develop it, who's responsible for the restoration plan that you've been talking about?
We haven't filed a restoration plan, a final one yet.
A final one, is there one that's been requested?
There's been a preliminary restoration plan that we submitted to the Conservation Commission. Chris Frateroli can speak on this a little better.
What brought that up? I guess that's the next question.
Yeah, absolutely. My understanding is that somebody had gone to the state and indicated that there was potential unauthorized wetlands-related violations on the site, which we understand to be true to some extent. So we were requested to prepare a restoration plan to address some of those issues, as far as, dumping in the buffer zone primarily was the reasoning for that.
Okay, but I mean, that's the primary reason why you're there, and then obviously you want to delineate all the wetlands, so when you come time to go for this project, you'll have a better understanding of what you got to do.
So the ANRAD proceedings confirms the wetland boundaries. That is what we've been in front of the Conservation Commission with over their last several hearings, and they did issue us an order as of a week ago today. The restoration plan discussion was not something that's been formally heard in a public hearing, but we have discussed that with them as well.
Okay, and that was at the onus of who?
The conservation agent.
Correct.
And that'll be submitted as a part of the notice of intent proceedings that we'll have with Conservation Commission in the future.
I actually thought I saw a meeting one time when she made the announcement, or the chair was kind of a little bit ticked off because of the Conservation Commission, because somebody, the neighbors, the way I listened to it on TV, maybe I was listening to it wrong, but I guess somebody made a complaint to the state. And my understanding is Brika made a comment during the Conservation Commission that the state had contacted her. Evidently, they were short on help. She was a former employee with most of the people that work there, so my understanding is the way she presented to the Concom, that she was asked to oversee this for the state. Am I close on any of that?
Generally, that's about how it played out. Typically, when a violation like this happens, it goes to the town first, and then the state may get involved if it's severe enough. But in this case, the town was sort of jumped over, so to speak. So,
well, I don't think they were jumped over. My understanding is there were several calls made by the residents to the town that didn't respond in a timely fashion as far as they were concerned, so they made the decision to call the state.
Oh, I don't know about the town's response time on that.
That's what I hear. So I'm just throwing it out there so we're all in the clear. We got that done. Just so the people in the audience know, they did go you went before the planning board, correct, on a 30-day non-binding cursory review?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and the Conservation Commission?
Likewise.
Well, I know you're back before.
Other than the ANRAD.
But you went to them before this?
Correct.
Okay. And both of those boards voted unanimously to move this forward?
Support the project moving forward, yes.
You went to the town council to get adopted into the LIPS program, right? How did that go?
The town council voted to support the project moving on to the next stage.
Okay. What was the vote? Do you remember?
5-4.
Okay. And I took the opportunity to watch the June 5th meeting, I think, 2024, when all this took place at the council meeting. There was some talk about fencing along the abutters lot lines, and I think the comments were made there that we haven't had a chance to look at that now. You're making a full proposal here. What did you do with the fencing up against the abutters properties?
The plans show a fence along the abutters properties. We added that as we were requested to and as we said we would.
Okay. What kind of fence is it? Do you remember?
We haven't spec'd that yet.
Oh, you just showed some chalk marks with a fence on the plan? Okay, no, I'm just... Like Archie said, the recent project on Grove Street, the fire department requested access from both sides of the building. So, and the westerly did the same thing. And I'm pretty sure down on Dean Avenue, they did the same thing also. So the fire department, yeah, you know, they needed that. I also remember that there was a discussion about some sort of a concept walking plan that was going to go to the back of the project, or the southwesterly part of the project, headed towards the watershed protection area, so that people may walk down there and walk around down by this, in through the swamp somehow, and get back out to the road that goes from the well back out to 140. Have you done anything with that yet?
That wasn't something we were proposing to construct. We provided a concept for the town for the portion of land that we were deeding to them to the south. If it's something they wanted to look into further, that was all.
Okay. So you didn't do it? You're not doing anything with that?
We are not.
Okay. What else do we got here? You mentioned some, what were the mitigation aspects, or what you were going to provide the town with mitigation? What was it, sidewalk and what? And you're going to give some land that's in wetlands?
The sidewalk, we were requested to set aside those 2 acres of land by the conservation agent, which we've agreed to do. As a part of the traffic report, the traffic signal timing, as well as the improvement study for the King Chestnut Street intersection, also traffic signal timing at another location, which is in the traffic report. Those are probably the main ones at this point in time, but we obviously just started the ZBA process and haven't heard all of I'm sure all of the mitigation that we'll need to
I've
consider.
been hearing mitigation for the last 4 years. They talked about with the Taj Mahal across the street here, mitigation on that, that they were going to mitigate by timing the lights. There's another project across from Honeydew down there. I think it's 32 units in the building down there. They talked about mitigation. As a matter of fact, the developer, I think it was the same developer for both places. One development, the town, he offered the town $10,000 to synchronize the lights. And then when he started the other building, they wanted $5,000 because it must have been closer to King and Chestnut. I don't know, but evidently the price went down to $5,000. So I got a solution for the traffic problem on 140, which I know quite a bit about because I own property on 140. I used to live on 140. And I know what the people are talking about. Thursday afternoon, Friday afternoon, Saturday noontime, traffic's backed up to Dunkin' Donuts. Which, all right, I don't need any applause. I don't need any clapping. I'm fine. I'm suggesting that you maybe look into moving an entrance, either one entrance or put an extra entrance in, easterly, up to that it matches up with Aspen Way, and that a light be put in there, so that all the traffic, the traffic will have a break. And I know it sounds funny, but to put another light in, but if you had a light and they were synchronized properly, in other words, if the lights are all green and somebody wants to get out of CVS and as soon as they trip the light, everything stops. They got to let the people out of CVS or Shaw's or whatever. That's the problem. And King Street is easy to synchronize because they could just make them all work. Believe me, I know it works if you get somebody that knows how to synchronize the lights. But if you had a light at Aspen Way, people trying to get out of the project on a Thursday afternoon, Friday afternoon, Saturday noontime, at least they'd have a chance to take a left and head towards town. You wouldn't have people taking a right saying, well, I'm going to cut down through Aspen Way. I'm going to go down Jordan Road and back up to Chestnut Street, maybe just to get uptown. I wish you to look at that. I know you say that the property doesn't exist there, but it does. I think the owner of this property that we're talking about right now owns that property there. I think there's more than enough room to do that, whether it be with an easement or whatever. I think that would alleviate some of the problems about getting behind some of these other buildings. I think it will alleviate the traffic more. And then as far as that, you got an escape route getting in through somebody else's property on the side there. I don't agree with that either. For a fire truck to come down after the problem, to take a right onto the property, a left down a little ramp or something in, and then another sharp right to get into the buildings there, you're wasting a lot of time doing that. If you had another access, a little bit more east, that lined up with Aspen Way, and you got a hold of the state, or whoever pays for it, put a light there, I think that would mitigate a lot of the traffic problems that are there currently. That's just my opinion. Let me just move back to parking, because parking was always an issue. I know that the town's engineer made a comment on Grove Street one that we just did. You know, how come it doesn't look like there's enough parking? There was more than enough parking. You know, we have a consultant that, you know, can speak to the parking when we get him on board. You know, I mean, he's here now, but I don't expect him to work for us until I sign a contract with him, but after we get the check, obviously. So, I mean, but those are the concerns that, you've heard all the concerns that we got here, so, and they're not light, and I'm sure that when the people talk, I just hope the people talk when they talk, that they realize that we probably mentioned a lot of things that you want to talk about already, and, you know, probably some of them are going to be answered in the future. You know, when we move on to the people, I'm going to give you 3 minutes, and that 3 minutes counts if you want to make a comment. That's part of your 3 minutes. If you want to ask a question, that's part of your 3 minutes, and also part of the 3 minutes is the answer that you ask from somebody. So when we get to that point. But I think Mark might want to speak before we move to that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
This is Mark Grabowski. He's the attorney that's worked with us on multiple projects over the past. He's written books on zoning, and he's professional. Let's put it that way.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mark Bobrowski, my office is in Concord. It's been my pleasure to serve the town of Franklin on the 40B projects that have been coming through here for the better part of 20 years.
At least, yeah.
Yeah. I can recall several town managers, Wolfgang Bauer, Jeff Nutting.
Only two since you've been here.
And
Yeah,
Jamie
two,
now,
right? You were
right.
a long time, and
Yeah.
Jamie's been a little bit.
Well, you know, back in the day, in the late 80s, Franklin was the fastest growing town in Massachusetts. I think there was something like 300+ building permits issued for single-family homes as Dukakis was running for president. So it's been an experience. I want to check a couple of boxes with the board that are procedural in nature. The first one has to do with safe harbor. Franklin currently sits at 10.86% on the subsidized housing inventory. That's a list kept by EOHLC, formerly DHCD, Department of Housing and Community Development. And as a rule, 10% is the goal of Chapter 40B. When a town achieves 10% subsidized housing, there are strict definitions for that, then the municipality can invoke a safe harbor. If you come back under 10%, and that could happen in the next census in roughly 7 years, then you would also again be subject to 40B. But there is an option for the town to choose safe harbor. There's a safe harbor available for the 10%. There's a safe harbor available for general land area minimum, which very few, if any, towns have reached. And then there are smaller safe harbors for things like housing production, large projects. So the rule here, which I'll recite for the board, is that within 15 days of the opening of the local hearing, if the board chooses to invoke safe harbor, it shall provide written notice to the applicant with a copy to the state that it considers a denial of the permit would be consistent with local needs, the grounds that it believes have been met, the factual basis for that position, including necessary supportive documentation. So I asked the chairman to canvass, if you will, various boards and officials, because they're really the people who have to make the decision. It's a town function to invoke safe harbor. And if you can report on, Mr. Chairman, what you got back, if anything, and then I'll tell you what I think might be the procedure for you to follow here. You are on day one of your 15 days. Today is the opening of the public hearing. There's only 14 more days. The state is not kind with this rule. If you're going to invoke a safe harbor, you have to do it now. If you miss the deadline, even though you're over 10%, the town generally is punished by being forced to take the housing because they didn't play by the rules. So it's important to play by the rules.
Okay, just so everybody knows, I came up with a memorandum, and I had the secretary send it to every department head, and I don't know, she got a list of all the people it went to. I don't really remember where it went to, but, and I gotta tell you that we got one response back. You know, said that time was of the essence, and that I had to hear back by 7:30 tonight. And I heard back from only one person, Brika, from the Conservation Commission. And all she said in her memo was that you guys were before them, and she said that they had, either they hadn't made a decision or she hadn't had a time to write it yet. So I'm not sure which was which, but irregardless, didn't say anything about invoking safe harbors. So, as far as I'm concerned. Like Attorney Babowski says, I threw it out there, nobody answered back. So when nobody answers back, you have to think that they didn't care.
So the board, the zoning board of appeals really has three options. Number one, it can entertain a motion to invoke safe harbor. That's in the absence of any guidance from other boards. I will note that the Planning Board, Conservation Commission, Town Council signed your LIP application by a 5-4 vote. So that's an indication that the other boards, at least haven't taken any action to object. The board can have a motion in the alternative not to invoke safe harbor, or the board can do nothing. And if the board does nothing and 14 more days go by, you missed your opportunity. So I'll let you make that choice. I would say that if you're going to invoke safe harbor, please catch me before I leave so that I can begin to gather the supportive evidence that I'm going to have 13 more days to produce by the time I start the process. So that's my guidance on that subject. With that, Mr. Chairman, I wonder whether or not you might want me to give a basic overview of 40B, because sometimes the audience is unfamiliar with the process, and a primer.
The next portion of the thing is going to be their questions, so maybe you should, because that way they're.
At least I can help
with. One of the primary questions that they ask is, what about the schools? And what about the school kids? And what it's going to cost the schools? So maybe you can address that, so that I don't have to do it later.
I'll start with a basic overview. Chapter 40B was adopted by the Commonwealth in 1969, and it was in the process. I'm watching Celtic City right now, episode 3, if you've seen it. The busing crisis in Boston throughout the 1970s was largely one of the tools the state decided to use was what they called the Anti-Snob Zoning Act. That was the name of it. They were taking the load off of Boston and spreading it out to the outer suburbs, well, the inner suburbs first and then the outer suburbs. So the rules are pretty simple. If a municipality has less than 10% of its housing stock, year-round housing stock, in subsidized housing, that means a deed restriction and a regulatory agreement imposed by, now it's highly regulated, by DHCD, now EOHLC. If less than 10% of your year-round stock is subsidized, then you are vulnerable to a 40B. What does that mean? An applicant can make one application, a comprehensive permit application, to this board. And this board sits in the place of all other boards with regard to local permitting. So if it needs a subdivision approval, this one doesn't, but if it did, the planning board would normally do that. This board does it. If it needs some other sewer permit or curb cut permit from the council or the select board, this board sits in that place. That's the nature of the game. It's a comprehensive permit. The only permits that survive in this system are, one, the state building code, which the commissioner will still administer unchanged. Two, the wetlands statute in the state, which is the bottom line for alteration of protected resource areas, and the state regulations produced by DEP, 310 CMR 15. And then the third would be having to do with, particularly with local septic system Title V regulations. Those are not alterable as well. This one's obviously going to be sewered, so Title V wouldn't apply here. That's it. Otherwise, it all comes through this board, and this board is in charge of issuing or denying a comprehensive permit. If you've ever been to a Board of Appeals meeting before for a special permit or a variance, you know that the usual suspects will appear here too. Traffic, noise, lights, water, stormwater, all of that stuff that gets played out in any other hearing is going to get played out here. And for those of you unfamiliar with the peer review process, the applicant has a professional team to the side of you and in front of you. They're making the best case that they can, that they're entitled to, that they meet health and safety standards and that they're going to be entitled to a permit. Anybody on the board, a civil engineer, a wetland specialist? No, and that's pretty much the case everywhere. So they need help, and the help they need is to be able to hire their own professional team so that their professional team can argue with this professional team, and what we end up at the end of the day is a project which meets health and safety, federal and state standards. That's the bottom line that we're shooting for. Health and safety, federal and state standards. And All of that is a long interplay. This meeting could go on for 3 meetings, it could go on for 13 meetings. In drafting comprehensive permit decisions for boards, I've prepared 11, 12 drafts, as it gets easier as you go, but that's the kind of process that we're talking about. This is very complicated law, and it's a mix of law and science. So from your perspective, if you want to be able to participate in the scientific discussion, I'm just going to put this idea in your head. It's sometimes easier to do that if you've got somebody who has the necessary expertise too, unless you're a soil scientist or a civil engineer or a wastewater or stormwater specialist. In that case, you're welcome. Now, in the case of a special permit, the fight is about, it's a jump ball. Right? They say it's good. The engineers that we hire say it's not so good. The board assesses the credibility of the witnesses, and that's the end of the story. If they decide to go along with them, they get the permit. If they decide that they made a mistake in their assessment of the project, they don't get the permit. The statute here builds in, however, a presumption that where the town's not reached its 10% or general land area minimum, there is a presumption that the need for the housing outweighs the local concerns. That's built right into the law. So it's not a 50-50 proposition, it's more like an 80-20 proposition, because the need for the housing is the overwhelming purpose behind Chapter 40B, and it has been since 1969. And the situation hasn't gotten any better because the governor is currently saying that we're so far behind in the housing game that she's going to take extraordinary steps now, and has over the course of the last year, to produce even more housing, whether it's 40B or not 40B. They're converting the office buildings that are empty in Boston to housing. Think about that. Right? So that's the kind of world that we live in right now. The review process does not go directly to court if the developer is given the short end of the stick. The developer has the right to appeal to an outfit in Boston called the Housing Appeals Committee. It's an agency of the state, and it exists only to hear developer appeals of 40B conditions or denials. If you're dissatisfied with what happens at the end of the day, you have the right to appeal to Superior Court or Land Court, and that would play out pretty much like any other appeal of a permit locally. So there's 2 different paths. They get to go to Boston, you get to go to either, where are you,
Dedham.
Bristol?
Dedham.
Norfolk, I forgot.
Dedham, they go to Dedham.
Yeah, they go to Dedham, if you can get in the courtroom these days, or you go to Land Court. So that's the way that all plays out. The only other thing I can say is that the standards for the board are such that they have to take into account the economic necessities of the developer. This is built into the statute as well. On a rental project like this one, 75% of the units will be market rate, 25% of them will be so-called affordable units. When, at the end of the day, the developer's bottom line has to meet the benchmark. The benchmark today is the 10-year Treasury note, which today I looked at just a second ago, 4.35%, plus 450 additional basis points, so that's 8.85% return on total costs. If they don't reach the benchmark, this is a presumptively uneconomic project as granted the project eligibility letter by the state. It comes out of the chute behind the 8 ball. It's not going to make enough money. Think about what that means for the board's process. Every time the board imposes another condition, all conditions cost money. Every time they impose a condition, the state has set this game up so that those conditions are going to further make the project uneconomic, more uneconomic. So there's a balance in there that the developer enjoys the benefit of that doesn't work on your side of the equation. I've, over the course of 150, 180 40Bs, I've worked with the municipalities roughly half the time. I work a lot with private developers who are doing good projects today. The long story is that every one of these things is different. Never give up the fight if that's what you want to do. But at the same time, you have to take into account the practical realities of the law. You can look at the DHCD HAC website. That's exactly what you put into Google. DHCD, space, HAC, Housing Appeals Committee. All the resources are there at your disposal. The rules are there, the previous cases of the HAC, long list of them there. There's a guide to the 40B process that's there. Take a look at it. It's worth your while to understand the rules of the game before you get invested. So I guess that's my overview. Let me talk about the unique situation of schools here. The assessment of impacts on schools is not, according to the Housing Appeals Committee, a valid 40B concern. So that's just, the Housing Appeals Committee has decided that it is not a local concern. Remember all the suspects I mentioned earlier? Traffic, noise, lights, those are called local concerns. School is not listed as a local concern, and it hasn't been ever. It's an important thing to know, certainly. So it's fair for the board to say to the applicant, tell us what the school issue is, or if any will be, so that we can plan at least accordingly. But you can't then turn on the dime and say, we're going to deny you because the impacts to the schools are too bad. That's not fair, according to the Housing Appeals Committee. So my job is to listen to this process. You've got a good start with regard to the technical support. One of them, Joe Pesnola from Hancock Associates, just up the road in Marlboro, is a well-known 40B civil engineer expert. He's going to take you through some of the technical issues. I'm hearing that traffic probably needs, with Joe's recommendation, some additional attention. But it's not uncommon for people like architects, certainly wetland specialists, to be involved where needed in the peer review process. And you can see how all of that takes time. My recommendation to the board is generally, next meeting is traffic. But that, we had enough to talk about with traffic. We don't need 3 experts sitting here. The meeting after that is stormwater. The meeting after that, is something else. And that, if that process can be worked on cooperatively with you, you can prepare accordingly as well. I'll answer any questions you might have. Yes, sir.
So how's a friendly 40B different from what you just said?
That's a good question. The usual entry port for a 40B is either Mass Housing, which can issue a project eligibility letter, or Mass Housing Partnership Fund, which is a separate entity, which can also issue a project eligibility letter. In the past, Mass Development has played that role, but not so much right now. Those are the typical, I don't want to call them unfriendly, but those are the neutral ports of entry. In a LIP, your chief executive agency, the city council, has joined in the application for the project eligibility by signing off on the applicant's application to what is now EOHLC, Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. And that's now being analyzed, that has been analyzed by EOHLC, and they've issued the PEL accordingly. So that's friendly versus, I've worked on friendly 40Bs. I did one in Dartmouth for a project located right on Route 6. Even though it was friendly, it took 2 years and 7 months, so it wasn't so friendly. And I've done regular 40Bs where it's one meeting and we're done. So it's sort of a misnomer these days. I think LIP, but LIP carries at least with it the fact that the Board of Selectmen and the town city council in Franklin has signed off on the application that they've made to the state. And it's supposed to carry more weight. It's supposed to mean that when they come here, the Board of Appeals go, oh, the selectmen said it was okay. But it doesn't work that way every time, because sometimes they don't. Board of Selectmen and Board of Appeals don't like each other. So you can well imagine the mystery.
All right, listen, we're going to open up the audience now. If somebody, when you speak, you will come up to the mic so you don't have to yell, and give your name and address so that we can record it for posterity that we know that you were here. That comes up when people say they don't get notice and they show up to the meeting. But how did they get notice if they didn't show up, so. But anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Jeffrey Netting, 2 Magnolia Drive. Mr. Chairman, I've been before this board many times in support of Barry Trooper Way 40B, Upper Union Street 40B, the one on West Central Street 40B, and I did that and recently the one on Grove Street, which I believe this body approved. And why was I at all of those as the town administrator and then afterwards? Because the town of Franklin wanted to get to 10%. We wanted to get to 10% because we wanted to control our own destiny once we get that. And by approving the 40B on Grove Street, another 330 units, that's going to put us probably at 12+%. This is a non-starter. This project should be killed tonight. The misguided public officials that I used to work for unfortunately supported this project, and we don't need it. We're in safe harbor. You should vote that tonight and put this to rest. People are going to talk about traffic, and they're going to talk about all those other things. The fact is, we met our legal obligation. It's about time we have a timeout. Okay? That's all I have to say. I've supported everyone, so we wouldn't have to keep doing this. We can't take any more growth now. Franklin's well above and beyond what every other community around here is doing for affordable housing. They get the 100 up, the 60 up, the 28 that's going up by the train station, the 51 behind the Vitas that approved. Enough is enough. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Richard Stratt from Cook's Farm. I'd like to thank the board for raising the concerns of the Cook's Farm neighborhood. So one of the things that has not really been addressed is the impact of the flooding and stormwater issues on Cook's Farm. That stream that's central to the aesthetics and the economics, I guess, of this particular development is Uncas Brook, and it broadens into a large pond that's right in the heart of the entrance to the Cook's Farm neighborhood. It's not only in the heart of the entrance, it is the entrance. If in fact that pond ever flooded, ever went over the street level, that would deny access to that neighborhood for some 50 houses. That means no police, no fire, no ambulance, no school buses, no access. And all it would take would be several feet of water. So in the event of any abnormal rain event, any abnormal flooding, it would only take a couple feet of water to completely have a catastrophic effect on that Cook's Farm neighborhood. Now I understand that it's not that that this is not actually part of the property itself, but the Uncas Brook stream, it goes right down the heart of the property being considered into Cook's Farm, and it is clear that brook has in fact flooded. In fact, in recent memory, it has in fact overgone its banks, at least last year, and I'm told by other residents, other years as well. It has not, to my knowledge, gone over the street, but it has gone over its banks. In the event of, if in fact there's extra paving, if there's extra diversion of the stormwater into the stream because of the construction, we don't know what will happen to the water levels in extreme rain events, but the events could be catastrophic. This was brought before the Conservation Commission, and they were concerned enough to discuss it at a meeting, I believe, about 4 weeks ago. And they pointed out in the discussions that the culvert may in fact be too small to accommodate this kind of excess rainfall event. So I haven't heard any discussion, and I haven't seen anything in the paperwork about the implications for the Cook's Farm development and the potentially catastrophic cutting off of the development in the event of a strong water event. And so I'd like to make sure that the developers have presented a clear plan for how they will make sure that doesn't happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. Larry Schluger, 9 Applewood Lane.
Just a quick note. I told Gene earlier today, he asked me about the procedure. I'm going to give you all 3 minutes. That 3 minutes includes the comment. If you have a question, how long it takes for them to give you the answer. 3 minutes and that's it.
Not a problem.
I think we'd all like to go to bed sometime tonight.
Yep.
So we'll just keep that in mind.
Okay.
He ran a little bit long because I forgot to turn my time.
I'll be quicker then.
Thank you.
Quick question. This is not just one special permit. How many special permits and variances are being asked for?
It's one special permit that includes no variance. Well, there could be some variance, but
So it's
some relief from the local zoning bylaws.
It's just one special permit?
It's not a special permit. It's a comprehensive permit.
Okay.
Special permits are governed by Chapter 48, Section 9. This is Chapter 40B, Sections 20 to 23. Different law.
So how many things are they looking to get excused from, shall we say?
That's the waiver list, and I haven't seen it. I didn't expect that we would get there tonight, but it's usually done at the end because the waivers change as the project unfolds. The peer reviews come in, they change their minds. We'll get a final waiver list by the last meeting, and then the board has to vote on each and every waiver.
Okay. The other issue, as you brought up, is parking. In Chestnut Ridge, we have a big problem with cars cutting through to avoid traffic on East Central. And if this project goes through, it's only going to make it worse. And something has to be done to alleviate that for us, because otherwise, we're responsible for our own roads, not the town. And if we have 300 more cars cutting through on a daily basis, it's going to rip our roads up more. And someone's going to have to pay for it, and it shouldn't have to be us.
My name is Doug Opelt. I live at 19 Northern Spy Road, and I'm here today to talk about the water impact that's going to happen on my property. To this day, I don't believe anybody from the town of Franklin, any of the boards, have ever been to my property. My property is the largest piece of property that butts up to the piece of property that they want to buy and build on. Not one single person from the development company has ever been on my property to look at what they're going to do is going to impact my property. So the first comment, they well backed up. They backed up this property. Where did they back it up? They took it off 140, but they put it straight into my backyard. 4 stories, no less, too. So that's super nice. Thanks a lot for that, guys. They make it sound great, but there are people impacted. There's 5 people in Cook's Farm, 5 owners that butt up to their property, and I'm one of them, and I feel like I'm one of the most impacted, financially as well as water backup. It's really nice also that the developer has chosen to build this massive property, and he's never walked it. He has no idea what's even back there. He calls it conservation land, but he has no idea. It's my land that touches their land. They have no idea. You're going to let them build? Has anybody come out to my house, look at it? Give me a guarantee that their impact on their building is not going to affect me financially. I'll sign off on it. Then they can build all they want. They're gonna cause a problem in my backyard. And nobody cares because the town wants money, and they're gonna put this in just like it's rubber stamped on all of the other boards. So that's all I gotta say.
Mr. Chairman and respected board members, my name is Sharif Tolba and I live in Cook's Farm, 15 Hayden Lane. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to voice our concerns. I want to start with saying that numbers speak, if you look at the audience. I want to mention some numbers here because we heard seemingly good things from the developer, but I think we need to hear more about the numbers. So for example, for the parking, as far as I know, at least from the last map that I have, there are 383 parking spaces. So assume that there are at least 30 cars active at a time. So they have one entrance only. So say they made 2 entrances, so there will be 15 at each, for example, entering and exiting. So just think about how much traffic this will add to our roads that are already busy. In the morning, sometimes I have to drive my kids to BFC CPS, for example, and Franklin High School, and this takes me 20 to 25 minutes. So I imagine this will add a lot of traffic to that. So the second thing I want to talk about is the water, the wetlands. So through a very simple estimation, and considering the number of buildings, the units, the size of the unit, I made an estimation that the displaced water is going to be around 3.29 million gallons, and this is only with 50% saturation for the soil. And we've been noticing over the past 3 years that even with the amount of rain that we're getting, that the soil is very saturated. And I imagine by adding all this displacement of water is going to flood our neighborhood. So this is the second thing that I want to mention, and I have the estimation here if you'd like to take a look at it. I just want to, I'm going to stop here. There are so many concerns from me, from my neighbors, but I'm just going to stop here to allow others to provide their questions. Maybe just before I go, a quick question to the developer. So I have Yeah, I wanted to know if they did any hydrology studies that they have conducted to assess the long-term water level changes. This is one thing that I want to know about, and I want to know if you've done any comprehensive traffic studies to tell us exactly how the traffic flow is going to be. Just saying that you're going to apply timing to the traffic lights, I don't think this is enough. We want to hear more about the numbers. Thank you.
Hi, Gene Grella, 36 Redgate Lane. First off, I want to start by saying that I've been, emailing Bruce, talking to Bruce. He's been fantastic to deal with and very responsive, so I want to thank you for that, Bruce. I also want to thank Jeff Nutting. I didn't know he was going to be here, but I really appreciate, Jeff, you saying what you said. It's very meaningful to all of us, and so thank you for that. Thank you for your service to this town for so many years. And I will repeat what Jeff said, safe harbor. Okay. I'm just going to talk about a few things. First of all, the number of waivers. There's 30 waivers right now. It started at 18. It's up to 30. I'd like to ask the attorney here, how many of those waivers is the town required to give to this 40B?
The standard for waivers generally follows along economic lines. So if you can't comply with a rule or regulation, you ask for a waiver. The reason that you cannot comply really is grounded in economics. If we have to do that, it's going to cost us X dollars. Remember the benchmark I described? It's going to drag me further lower than the benchmark. So therefore, give us a waiver.
But is the town required to waive its bylaws in this case?
No, the town is in a position where it doesn't have to waive its bylaws if waiver would result in a local concern which weighs more than the need for the housing. So it's always a balancing test between those two things.
I have 30 local concerns that I wouldn't waive. The next thing I want to just talk about quickly, the well and the groundwater. If you look into this, what they've written up here as far as the protections they're going to put in place, they specifically speak to protections of the groundwater and well water. Why did they do that? Because you can't wash cars on the site. You can't change oil. You can't have pet excrement on the site. It has to be cleaned up right away. My question is then, with all of those protections that are in place, who's going to police that over the years, 5 years, 10 years down the road? Who's policing that to make sure that we're not affecting the groundwater? Traffic, I mean, we don't have, a lot of people are here just for traffic alone. Okay, we know what the traffic situation is. If they're coming here and telling us that they're going to make the traffic situation better by building 264 apartments, then, okay, good luck with that. Okay, that's not happening. Okay? All right, last thing I was going to say is a lot of people have been talking about Chapter 40B. I'll talk quickly about Chapter 40A, Section 17, which I'm sure you know. A lot of you already know. For those of you who don't know, that's our right to appeal. Okay, and it's a right for abutters to appeal. We can appeal on issues like increased density, loss of privacy, traffic concerns, decrease in property value. Is that one clear to everyone? Yeah. Decrease in property value with putting a big 3-story building in my backyard is not going to decrease my property value, and other specific impacts. So we have the right to appeal. Okay, and all I'm going to end here and say, Bruce, give me a little extra time. Is that the way this is written right now, I can guarantee you we will appeal, okay? And we have the resources to appeal.
Thanks, Gene. Gary Love, 39 Redgate Lane. I just want to talk about the practicality of the planning for this, really. We've heard a lot of the issues. There's over a dozen apartment units within a mile and a half all along East Central already. It feels like we're trying to shoehorn in another development that we've all heard some of the issues, traffic, again, being one of them. It's been stated there will really be no solution to the traffic issue on 140, and the issue's already very, very difficult with the Taj not fully occupied and the 2 new ones not even finished yet, along with this one. So I kind of reiterate, we put ourselves in a position to give ourselves options, to be practical about the planning of the town of Franklin. And it seems to me that this project, with the multi-story we even had from our master plan, our town master plan, compared to other neighboring municipalities, Franklin's housing stock has fewer single-family dwellings and more multi-family dwellings. So it just seems like practically we're just trying to shoehorn something in where it just doesn't belong. So that's all I wanted to say.
Good evening. Steve Huston, 10 Wampanoag Drive. So a lot of the arguments that are here tonight we heard before the planning board. My opinion is the town council did a great service to the town by even allowing this to get to you folks. I just ask you to save the town a great amount of pain and restore a little sanity in upholding the zoning laws as they're written.
Hey, Gino.
Gino Carlucci, 1 Tony Lane. I have a few brief comments that may not be quite as popular as the previous ones. First of all, regarding the housing crisis, the state and others have documented clearly the lack of sufficient housing, not only to provide reasonable opportunities for adequate living conditions, whether through ownership or renting, but also to sustain our economy. In addition to the documented evidence, the anecdotal evidence presents numerous examples of people struggling to find housing to meet their needs. Second, the context. Projects like this need to be considered in a broader context than the site alone. The East Central Street corridor has the potential to develop into an attractive, walkable, mixed-use area, thinking long-term. This project will serve as a key building block toward that goal by providing a supply of pedestrians. In doing so, it advances one of the primary goals of the newly adopted master plan. Final issue, traffic. It was been touched upon, but traffic is the product of suburban sprawl. The more sprawl, the more traffic. Putting this project somewhere else to address the housing crisis would just increase traffic more because every trip requires a car. This location, being located near services and amenities, it's not necessary to use a car for every trip. Finally, though, I would like to suggest a condition that would help protect, help the project promote walkability. A sidewalk is already proposed. I suggest a condition to require that a 15 to 20-foot strip along that sidewalk from the entrance driveway to the property line have enhanced landscaping consisting of some combination of trees, flowers, decorative fencing, benches, and public art in order to both enhance the pedestrian experience and to soften or conceal the view of the asphalt loop and parking lots proposed for the front of the development. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Steve Malloy. I'm Russet Hill Road. With all due respect to the gentleman who was here and other people who feel like we need to create some kind of utopian walking zone, no one's going to walk anywhere here. 250 people living over there, no one's going to walk. That's meant to be kind of a selling point for this, but it ain't going to happen. We don't need this project. That's been demonstrated. Mr. Roy made some good comments on that. I was going to just reemphasize that. There's better uses of that development over there than 264 rental units, which bring their own host of problems. It's a very transitory group of people. They're going to turn over frequently. And if we have an out with safe harbor, I would challenge us to use it now. Why wouldn't we do that if I understood the attorney correctly? Can we start that process now?
Yes,
Can this body?
it's already started because the hearing opened tonight. If you're going to invoke safe harbor, you're on day 2 tomorrow, and that means there's 13 days left.
And who invokes that?
Board of Appeals.
I leave it to you folks. Oh.
Come on. You gave a statement. You had me added into the thing. What did it say about unilaterally making the decision on our own?
I think that the board has three choices, and I summarized them
That's what I
before.
heard you say, yeah.
Number one, they can invoke safe harbor. Number two, they can decide not to invoke safe harbor. Or number three, they can do nothing, which is the same thing as not invoking safe harbor.
So two choices.
That's, that's the,
Again, not to put you on the spot, but it sounds to me like there's an out, we don't need this project. I'm sorry?
I've been on the spot for a long time.
Then you take it in the spirit it's meant, but I would respectfully suggest we take that action.
Okay.
Mark Minichelli, 31 Longfellow Drive in Franklin. I also happen to be on a local group that we call ourselves BEN for Franklin, which stands for Building Equitable Neighborhoods for Franklin. I support this project. I know it's not a popular view tonight. And regarding the safe harbor comments, yes, the state mandates a 10% minimum affordable housing inventory, but that's only a minimum. You know, I'm aware that trying to buy or rent in the town of Franklin is extremely difficult, right? Everybody says it's not affordable, especially younger people who are trying to start a family or trying to get started in their careers. We need more inventory of available units in the town of Franklin in order to moderate the price increases. Building more units, especially units that have an affordable component to them, helps stabilize the price increases in Franklin, helps make Franklin more attainable for different types of people. I thought it was interesting, sir, that you referred to when the 1969 40B first came into being. It was called, it was against snob zoning. We don't want Franklin to be considered a snob zoned community, right? We want to be open and inviting to more people with different backgrounds, people starting out in their lives. And the best way to do that is to add inventory to both owned and rented properties here in Franklin. I think the developer has done a great job. Excuse me, I've got the floor.
He's got 57 seconds left.
Thanks for your help. I think that the developer has done a great job of being attentive and coming to these meetings and listening to the comments and coming back with changes to their plan. It's not perfect. It's not a perfect location. But if it's on Route 140, we do, and as part of the master plan, we do have a GATRA plan to put a regular bus route running up and down Route 140. It's walkable to the services around this area, and it can be easily busable to the downtown as well. I support. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Rob Rappa. I live at 40 Redgate Lane for the past 10 years with my wife Susan and our 2 kids. I'd also like to mention that my wife and I were born and raised in Franklin and lifelong residents, and we're very concerned about what the town is becoming. With apartment complexes everywhere, traffic gridlock, high taxes, ridiculous fees for school activities, but I digress. I recently sent an email to Mr. Hunchard and the members of the zoning board to express our opposition to the housing development proposal, and I just wanted to take a couple minutes to summarize our views and opinions. We believe this development is just too large for the area, and the increase in population density would lead to a strain in our infrastructure and water well that serves the surrounding neighborhoods. We also believe it would lead to an increased traffic congestion, which is already problematic in Franklin, as we know, and could put an additional strain on our police, fire, and emergency services. We're concerned about the noise of the construction that could take months or even years, as well as the large ground-shaking vehicles potentially causing damage to ours and our neighbors' foundations. For us in particular, the proposed development would certainly be an eyesore and could prevent noise and privacy issues, as well as the site is directly behind our house, where we have enjoyed the quiet woods, wetlands, and open spaces for the past 10 years. I understand that we were never guaranteed to have the quiet woods and open spaces behind our house for the whole time we live there, but we believe there has to be a better option for this land than what is being proposed. Maybe a smaller development of affordable condos and townhouses. In the email I sent to the ZBA members, I included pictures from our backyard, which shows the lack of natural buffer between our property and the site proposal. The site plan from the developer shows bushy trees and greenery between our house and the proposed site. But in reality, 7 months out of the year, there is really no buffer at all after the leaves fall off the trees, which you can see in the pictures I sent. Again, we are opposed to this current plan, safe harbor, please, but we ask that any plan that is being considered would add rows of coniferous trees and mature bushes for more of a year-round natural buffer, as well as fencing between the properties for additional security and privacy. Thank you for your consideration of our requests, and thank you for your time and consideration of all the points brought up from the people here today.
I gotta bring this way down. Are we allowed to ask these guys questions? Or is
Through
this
the
just
chair.
to you guys? Okay, fantastic.
Name and address?
I'm sorry, Shannon Nealon, I live in the Cooks Farm neighborhood. And my kids go down, my time can't be up yet. Impossible.
Oh, you got another 3 minutes.
Thank you. So I am a little concerned about this is a comment, not a question. I'm a little concerned about the river area, my kids call it the turtle pond because they see turtles there. So when we go down there, every year, there's periods of time, once, maybe twice a year. I only speak to this because you said you hadn't really heard it before. But I can say from firsthand knowledge, I can drag my 3 little kids in here if you want to hear from them, that bank has regularly, every year that we've lived here, the water rises up just with the natural waterfall into the neighboring properties. It's gone all the way up to almost crossing the road. So I don't know if there's been statements that hasn't happened, but it definitely has. So I think we need to really take a look at that. I think that's going to be a very important aspect with the lack of permeable surfaces and all the runoff from all these big apartment buildings and the paved areas. There is going to be some concern of water coming down into that river and continuing to flood that. It's happening now. So please just take that into consideration if you needed some firsthand knowledge of having seen it. My question is, have you considered building a smaller property that would not require so much, be less impactful? It wouldn't require waivers and strain on traffic.
They can either answer it or they don't have
I hope they answer.
We're gonna pass on that.
How do we get an answer?
to. Well, like he said, this is the first of many meetings to come, if it goes that way.
Would you consider looking to a smaller property that wouldn't be so impactful on the community, if it would get it done?
We're gonna just pass on
All you
responding.
can say was yes, I'd look at it. How simple can
Hey,
it be?
he could have given me a bone, but he didn't, so I gave him a chance. So the town is facing now, right now, a $3.8 million deficit. And if we do the override, that puts us only at level services. So is there a consideration, how do we consider the fact that if it doesn't pass, or even if it does pass and we're at level services, we won't have the infrastructure, the police, the fire, to maintain this many apartments? Again, hearkening back to my smaller project, I understand it's capitalism. I understand you want to make a lot of money. I think you still could with a smaller property. So is there, what is the consideration there? How do we take that into account? The fact that we're already at a deficit, we're only going to be at level services, and there would be a great impact from this and the other properties that haven't even been filled yet.
Thank God, the weather's gonna go out.
I'm so good at this.
We'll have to answer that some other time, sorry. Your time's up.
Are you serious?
Well, unless Mark wants to answer.
I'm afraid to go up against the bells there, Mr. Chairman. The long story short is that the developer has proposed this project he's entitled to play his application out. You might persuade him otherwise, but he's submitted it, and the board now has the obligation to consider it. So essentially what a developer would do in this circumstance is the economic test. The state has guaranteed him a certain amount of ROTC, return on total costs, and he has to either figure out a way to make that work. Shrinking the project doesn't help in that regard, just from the developer's perspective. Now, if he was proposing 6-story buildings with steel superstructure, and he could make money with a 3- or a 4-story building with wood structure, that's the kind of example that a developer would be wise to consider. But just shrinking the project is generally not something that the developer takes into account, because it runs counter to the protection that the state has already offered under the economic tests of Chapter 40B.
That didn't really answer my question.
Next.
Hi, my name is Susan Rappa, 40 Redgate Lane. Good evening. I had emailed each of the ZBA members. I'm hoping you had time to review my letter. So instead of rehashing that same letter, I do have some issues with a lot of the topics that were brought up tonight as well. I share those same views. So instead, I'm going to share with you all how this Friendly Bee process has played out this far for us as abutters and for the thousands of Franklin residents who are against this project. The preliminary project review application was submitted in '23. In the spring of '24, I was informed of this project as an abutter when a friend texted me. She was at a planning committee meeting and said, "Your backyard's on the screen and they're talking about abutters, like you're there, but I don't see you at the meeting, nor are any other abutters there." By this time, the developer had already gone through the Conservation Committee, that was approved, went through the Planning Committee, and that was approved. That's why none of the abutters were at either of those public meetings, because none of us were informed of it. When we brought this up to the town council, one of the members said, "Sorry, it was an oversight on our part, not sending out the meeting dates." And anybody that was at the town council meeting can attest to that. So here we are a year later, and the proposal before you tonight, it includes 3- and 4-story buildings. Those are in my backyard with no buffer. Parking lots proposed will have cars and trucks that will shine lights into my backyard. Those long buildings, that is my yard. So that's concerning. Due to the wetlands in the middle of the project, their desire to make as much money as possible, as stated, they are pushing the apartments unnecessarily close to our property lines. After the town council meeting, our neighborhood requested a meeting with the town officials and the developer in front of my house. There was a large turnout of residents sharing facts and concerns, many of which you have already heard, that this is not the location for such a massive project. I, at that time, asked the developer to walk from the front of my yard to the backyard to see firsthand how invasive the project is and the lack of buffer. He declined. The developer did agree, thank you, Chairman, for mentioning, the developer did agree during one of the town council meetings last year that a fence would be proposed, and we actually saw a picture on the screen, the second meeting, that there was a fence and some shrubbery. I didn't see that tonight. It is now missing. Please remember that this is all happening at the same time the town is considering an override. Although I recently learned that the board cannot consider the economic impact as a reason for denial of a 40B project, that's concerning to me as a resident. Mr. Stobart, who I have to say is a wonderful and well-respected man in Franklin, has every right to sell his property.
Yes, he is.
He was asked kindly and directly in December why he agreed to this project. He said, and I will summarize, I don't know his exact words, "I know everybody's mad at me about the apartments. I went to the town and asked what options I had, and they suggested the apartments. I'm concerned for the thousands of residents who are speaking out against the proposal, that they're not being heard. Please consider the Franklin residents who live here now and love this town, not just the money." And, thank you. As the developer mentioned, there was a buffer and lots of vegetation. This is my property line. It's the rock wall. And that is the Stobart's property. There is no buffer. There is no natural vegetation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. My name is Melanie Hamlin, and I'm going to answer a couple of emails that I've received. Yes, I do live in Franklin. I live on 70 Daniel Street. I am in my 8th year of being a town councilor. I am the chair of the Economic Development Committee. I am on the Budget Subcommittee. I am on the Joint Budget Committee. I was the clerk of the Master Plan Update, and I was the chair for the Franklin for All project, and many, many other projects in the town. Recently, I have received threats via emails, and myself and my colleagues have been maligned in public, and I thought I needed to come here and defend myself and this process. This process was put together, it's a new process for a friendly 40B. And this developer is one of the first developers to go through this and actually be really respectful of all the boards and committees. He didn't have to go in front of all of us, but he did. And we thought that the town council decided that this project had enough merit to go in front of the ZBA. And this is part of the process, and everybody gets to say something, which is really part of democracy, and I think democracy is awesome. But I really hope people stop spreading misinformation and stop threatening people that don't agree with them, okay? We live in a community here, okay? And I love Jeff Nutting. I've worked with him. I just happen to disagree with him right now. But that's okay. But it's okay. I still love him anyways. It's okay. All right. Let's see. The project fits with the housing production plan and the master plan. 25% deedable affordable units. Very important in a time where we live in a state that has a housing crisis. People need places to live, and some people think we should aspire to have more than 10%, maybe 13 or 15% affordables in our community. So there's this little bit, I don't know how much more time I have left, but I just wanted to stand here.
10 seconds, Mel.
10 seconds, okay. The misinformation about how much it's going to cost for the schools that is incorrect. So maybe we can talk about it offline, or if anybody wants to talk about it, we can. The cost per student doesn't, it's like everything and then divided. It's not, if you add another student, it's going to cost that amount of money to put people in. So that's, thank you.
Thank you, Mel.
For the lawyer, if I could ask?
Sure.
So if this process did proceed and ultimately was approved, how long does the residents have to appeal to the courts?
The same as it would be for any other zoning decision of this board, so it's a 20-day appeal period.
So folks, we better get organized if this goes through so we can fight this, okay? And you can count on my money too.
Halftime. How about halftime? I'll give you half.
Yeah, I only need 10 seconds.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I just had one other comment that I wanted to mention that was concerning. You know, tonight, we've talked, the council as well as the developer has talked about we've talked about all these other great ideas for this property. But what is concerning to me is the developer had said he will only build that large amount of buildings, right? He doesn't want to consider it, and it's because of the money. I understand that. But what I found was the public records show that Stobart's property was mortgaged in January through the TAG Construction, the developer, and they're on the deed. So if the developer isn't going to, like, it's concerning that they already have some sort of control of the property, and this is, like, they're not open to any other ideas. So I just wanted to share that's concerning for residents. Yes.
Thank you. Gene's walking back up. You need another minute and a half?
Just there was some questions.
There's some online.
Oh, there are? Okay.
Gene Grella, 36 Redgate Lane. No, there was a question about had the developer looked into the flood range, and they had, at the comment committee, they said that they had talked to Wayne Stobart, resident of 70 years, and he told them that the water never overran its banks, but they never talked to anybody else about that.
Well, they said that they didn't have any aerial photos that went back that far, so they talked to the owner of the property for the last 70 years. I've lived there for 70 years.
Yeah, but why not talk to us?
I saw them.
Right, talk to the people who
If they were gonna do
live.
anything, make sure all the aerials are gone. And so forth. You know,
The people who live in the brook, we all know that the water overruns its banks. We see it. I walk that neighborhood almost every day. You know, so I wanted to just bring that up. That was something that had come up that I think
Thank you.
I could answer.
Thanks, Gene. We got somebody on the line, Casey? Let one at a time.
Hi, my name is Kara. I am at 140 Jordan Road. Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah.
Awesome. Sorry, I was there earlier, but I did have to leave as it was getting late. But I'm a little bit new to this process, and I'm curious. I understand the developer is out to make money. What is in this for the town, other than what seemed to me to be sort of sham things like a 200-foot sidewalk and traffic studies that have already been done? What is in it for the town? Is the town making money off of this development? Like, why are we doing this?
I can tell you the last two projects that have been approved in town were, you know, the mitigation added up to over $750,000 to improvements they did to the town. Or they gave money to the town for improvements to be done by the town, so.
So how much money is this developer giving to the
I
town?
haven't heard a dime yet, other than they're gonna fix a couple of feet of sidewalk going up East Central Street towards town. Maybe it was, I don't know, 100 feet, I forget what they said, but.
Okay, so I mean, aside from the people's concerns where they want to see, you know, more affordable housing, which I'm not one of those people, I think we have enough, and I was born and raised in Franklin, and this is not a town I even barely recognize anymore. But aside from that, I guess I'm having trouble seeing what benefits we're gonna get from it. It's not gonna have the tax implications that condos would have. I don't really understand why they can't make money building single-family houses that wouldn't have as much traffic, but I mean, that's my open question is what as a town are we getting out of this? Putting to the side the idea that we need more apartments, which I personally disagree with.
You wanna handle that, Ted?
Well, there's a number of things, but the short answer, as has been identified, is increasing housing and with increasing affordable housing. So that's benefit.
Okay. Anyone else online? Casey, are you all set, huh? Who, I forgot a name.
Bruce, I have a thought on that.
Okay.
This is a site that will likely be developed at some point, because Franklin is being developed. So it's just a question of what does Franklin want it to be, and is it a long-term, underused landscape debris lot? Or is it something else, right? And if someone could make that affordable, they might have bought the property. So that's just a thought on what the town could get out of it, is it's going to be developed at some point, perhaps, or it sits, right? So there's another angle on it.
I can answer the question probably a little bit more pragmatically. The last project we approved for 40B was on an industrial piece of property. Now, people would say, why would you use an industrial piece of property to build housing on it? The particular piece of property that was presented had been for sale for 25 years. It had a few, I mean, this site is an environmentally sensitive site. that site had a little bit of wetlands on it that they were able to work the buildings around. They could put a building here, they could put a building there, and they could do it. Something you couldn't do industrial-wise, because when they come in to build an industrial building, they want to build a 40,000 square foot building, or a 400,000 square foot building. And the site wasn't built for that, or wasn't made for that. It just didn't work out, so the site was never sold. A developer came in, somebody bought it, a developer came in, he offered to buy it, they arrived at a price and they did it. You know, everybody says this site would be developed. If this site has been partially developed over time, but if you notice, everything is towards East Central Street. It's a pretty tough site to develop because of the environmentally sensitive area that it's in. It's got wetlands in it, it's got wetlands, filled wetlands, it's got wetlands, it's got the stream in it, perennial stream. It's even got a river. Last I heard, they identified the river, and I don't know, maybe the wetlands guy can correct me, but do they consider that a river that goes through the middle of that?
It's not defined as a river under the Wetlands Protection Act, it would be a perennial stream.
Okay, but there's different regulations that go. If it was a river, you'd have to stay 200 feet from each side, you know, to build on it. If you were gonna build, that's zone commercial, nice, you know, if it's a big spot. If it wasn't wet and wetlands, it probably would have been developed long before this point. You know, they sold a piece off, they built a medical building back there, and if you've ever been in there, you'll see that it drops off in the back. They used to grow shrubs out there, they grew really well because of the soil conditions out there was wet, you know, but for somebody to come in and build it as a commercial site, they have a bigger hoop to jump through than somebody proposing a 40B. So that's why these pieces of property, large pieces of property, end up like that. That's the bottom line, you know. So. Anyway, I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's okay. Susan Moreau, I live on Russet Hill Road. I read something on the Town of Franklin website from the Department of Planning and Community Development, and it was November 25th, it says. I think it was discussing Larissa's Court. And it says, until further notice, the town policy will be to accept friendly bee applications that provide for home ownership and not rentals. The town is requiring friendly 40B projects not include any housing that are large-scale rental apartments exceeding 20 units. The town will only consider friendly 40B projects that offer home ownership, including but not limited to single-family subdivision developments, duplex or triplex housing developments, and condominium-style and cottage-style developments or small-scale family rental projects, 20 units or under. Where does that fall into
What date
place?
did that, you say that came out?
November 25th, 24.
Okay, this project was approved by the council.
I
on
thought
June
maybe that was the reason.
5th.
So from-
If you
so-
want to say they beat the deadline, they beat the deadline.
Yeah.
The deadline was an artificial thing that they came up with because they didn't want a bunch of friendly 40Bs with a lot of units. So, I mean, I don't know what to tell you on that, but.
It was the only thing, I never had heard anyone say anything about that, so that's why I wanted to bring it up.
We didn't say.
No, I never heard anyone say
And there's
anything.
nobody here that made that statement saying it either. So.
No, I meant in general, even before this meeting. I just never heard anything said about that, so I
Okay.
didn't know
All right.
if it was valid.
Another one online? If you're online, go ahead.
Hi, it's Brian Larry, 2 Russet Hill Road. I just wanted to echo some other statements related to the flooding that's occurred, or almost occurred, on the culvert there on several occasions, probably about 10-plus years ago. It had flooded almost up and over the road. I called the DPW and met with some people down there, and at the time, the solution was they had to install this big fencing because the culvert was not wide enough to manage the flooding. And several times a year, we'll see the DPW down there with some trucks, and they'll be scooping out debris, trying to increase the flow of water, which also impacts behind my house. So I know that there's not any members of the DPW here, but it definitely has been an issue. And I can see this becoming an issue should the impervious land be impacted over there with the new building. So I just wanted to share that.
Okay. Is that it? Thank you. Just so everyone knows, hang on one second, just so everyone knows, when these applications come in, they're ferried around to the different departments. I think Gus actually personally hands out the folder or whatever, if I'm not mistaken, right?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, so, you know, it's not like we haven't got any comments back from anybody yet, but just remember that this is just the first hearing. We're obligated to have the first hearing within 30 days from the time I'm done. We're obligated to have the first hearing within 30 days of the time they file their application. You know, and that would mean even if we didn't have a meeting scheduled, we'd have to get something online. But fortunately, this worked out. We could have got an extension if we needed. I'm sure they would have granted it. But, you know, this is just the first part of the process, and it may seem like it came quick because that's the regulation. 30 days from the time it's presented, we have to have the first public hearing. And here we are. So.
If there is no hearing held within the first 30 days, the application is constructively approved.
So, I mean, we're doing what we got to do. Yeah. There was anybody else? Online?
Hi, my name is Matt Papagno. I'm from Wampanoag Drive, right around the corner from this project. I spoke out at the town council meeting last year when this was coming up, and I really wish they just denied it and ended it there because the public comments were overwhelming. The people don't really want this project. And as further evidence of that, look at all of the apartment buildings in Franklin today. There's for lease signs on every single one of them. Somebody on the board there just said this project will be developed eventually. Well, that makes sense, but let's develop projects that we need. We need single-family houses in this town. Every single open house has wait lists out the door. They sell in hours, not days, and they sell for over ask. Yet every apartment building has now renting and vacancies available. So I think it's obvious we don't need it. And a 175-foot walking path and a GATRA bus route don't mitigate the risks. We don't need it. Nobody takes the bus. And nobody walks to the train station from this side of East Central Street. So please deny this project.
Anyone else, Casey? Okay, somebody's over here?
Yeah, Rich Piccolo, Cooks Farm Road, which is the village, not to be confused with the development. Just one question. We've talked about affordable housing. Can anyone give me a sense of how we rate in the state of Massachusetts in terms of percentages relative to the other, whatever, 300 or 400 communities? Are we high, low, medium?
I must study this.
If you look at the SHI, it'll give you a precise answer. Every city in town is listed alphabetically.
I'm sorry, the SHI?
The subsidized housing inventory.
Okay.
If you put in DHCD space SHI, it's an 8-page list. It used to be that probably 40 to 50 towns had made it over 10%, but I would say now that the number is probably pretty close to 80, 90.
Okay.
I live in Concord.
In terms
We
of
were
like the total percentage, somebody mentioned.
Well, there's 351 cities in town.
No, I understand that, but just getting over 10% is one level. But somebody mentioned that if all these units that are still coming online, plus this unit comes online, we might be over 12%. Whatever the number is, and I don't know what it is, how would we rate? Would we be in the top 10%, the top 15%?
No, think about the cities, Lowell, Lawrence, Brockton.
No, I mean in terms of number of communities.
Well, their percentages are all in the high teens. Some are over 20.
In Boston, and so there's going to be some larger communities that are going to have much higher percentages.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, within the state of Massachusetts, of the whatever 350, 400 communities, where do we rate in terms of the tier? Top 10, top 15?
You're just with the other communities that are over 10%. Most communities that are over 10% are at 10.8 or 11.1 or sometimes 10.1.
Right. But this is my point. If we're 12, aren't we in the higher level, and haven't we taken...
You're creeping up, yeah.
You know, haven't we done our fair share, so
There
to
was a
speak?
case that Amherst had 20 years ago, went all the way to the Supreme Judicial Court, and it's called Boothroyd, you can read it, Boothroyd versus ZBA of Amherst. They were over 10%, a local group got together and said, why'd you prove this? And the SJC took the case and said they approved it because they thought it was better to have more housing, and there's nothing to stop them from doing that.
No, I totally understand that. It's just a data point that I think is
Yeah.
important to the community.
Well, the list is the data, so if
Okay.
you're that interested, take a look online, just Google it and you'll see.
Okay, thank you.
Mark, quick question. what's been going on with the state lately? I know when we did the master plan update committee, it was talk that, we're at 10%, but could the state raise that to 15%?
I think there'd be a riot, but so I don't think the answer is, I know that we need more housing, and that might be something just discussed in the halls of the legislature, but I don't see any bills out there that would do that, so. Yeah, one of the things that I thought that was being discussed was that on these rental projects where 100% of the units count,
Yeah.
that has been a long-time policy, and there was talk that they would turn that around so that only the affordable units counted in a rental project.
Oh, and then take them out. Just so people know how this works, if you're doing a condo project, 25% of it would have to be affordable, but only those 25 affordable count towards the housing stock.
Right.
The affordable housing stock.
Condo meaning for sale.
Yeah, so when you do a when you do an apartment project, if they got 269 units or whatever it is, and 25% of them, what'd that come out to be, 69 or something affordable, I don't know what, but somewhere around there.
66.
The whole 269 count towards the affordable housing stock.
And that was because 25 years ago, the state was trying to encourage rental housing, so that was one way to do it.
Dave Dorian at 14 Russet Hill Road in Franklin here, over in Cook's Farm. So a statement, and I do have a question, but the statement is, I don't think that the residents of Franklin need to solve Massachusetts's housing crisis. I think we've certainly stepped up here in this town. I've been here 40 years. We've stepped up in this town.
You're a newcomer.
Yeah, I'm a newcomer, I know, just a young one, but I think that Franklin has stepped up. We can't solve everybody's problems here. I'd like to know, sir, can we retain you? Can we retain you for our appeal? Can you?
He beat you to the punch.
All right, but we will appeal, that is, and I'd like to parrot the other folks that have gotten up here and said safe harbor. Please, I'm begging you, safe harbor.
Mark, just a clarification. On all the projects you've seen appealed by abutters or the towns or whatever, what's the success rate? Just so you know.
I remember Chairman Lowy fondly, the chairman of the Housing Appeals Committee. He retired about 10, 15 years ago. And he belonged to a gym in Boston that I belonged to as well. And Don Schmidt, who was a well-known official at DHCD, was also in the gym. And we would have philosophical discussions about 40B 3 days a week when we met. And I remember fondly that, that he was point blank about it. My job is to produce affordable housing. And he was the chairman of the Housing Appeals Committee. So that's the likelihood of success for a municipality. You have to have a really strong case. I'm not saying they don't exist. Please don't misinterpret me. I myself have litigated 2 denials through the Housing Appeals Committee. But they were really strong cases on behalf of Groton and on behalf of Canton. So
That's okay. If we can slow these guys up, that'll help me. Maybe we make it just expensive enough that it just isn't worth it.
Okay, we seem to be slowing down. If there's one, I'll take one more speaker if there's nobody else that wants to talk, because it's getting late. Obviously, we may never have another meeting, or we may have many to come on this project. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sure. Terry Monjar for Cook's Farm Village. I guess I've heard all the comments. Going back to Rich's point on the quota, I do think based on the conversation that we were having, if we're in the 80th slot in terms of where we stand with 40B housing, that really puts us in the top quarter already of meeting the 40B housing across the state. I agree. I think we've done our job. Traffic, I don't think that can be underestimated. 140 is 2 lanes. It's not 4 lanes. You can't get around that traffic. Traffic's already bad. It already takes a lot of time to get in and out of all of these different areas. Cost to the town. I was in my prior town. It's not only the cost to schools that you have to think about. It's all the services too. It's police, it's fire, it's roads, it's all of that, that would have wear and tear. So even if they give you $1 million, that doesn't go very far for 20, 30, 50 years that this development will be there. Alternatives, why aren't you considering alternatives? There's tiny houses, there's single-family houses that people have talked about a lot. Why can't we put up some tiny houses? That might help those little guys that are trying to come into the homes. And if we put up single-family homes that aren't these mega houses, that also would alleviate some people being able to afford houses here in Franklin. You talked about the first hearing had to be within 30 days. I believe I heard that it's 15 days to disapprove it, and tomorrow's day 2. Let's not lose that window, that we can disapprove this before it goes further. I'd like to understand from you, what were the conditions that made such a strong case that the other ones that you were on were disapproved in the courts?
One of them was a case in which the developer was building a project next to the municipal light plant of Groton. He was on a curve, and in order to meet sight distance standards for safety, he had to cut land on the municipal light plant property. And the town said, we don't have to give you an easement to cut. The judge said, well, it's just a little easement. And I remember my caption in my brief to the Supreme Judicial Court was, a little easement is still an easement.
That's right.
That's not a rule or regulation. That's an act of the town to, take property owned by the public and give a piece of that to a private entity like the developer. The court said it doesn't, the powers here don't go that far.
So I would imagine here, I think there's 200 and something feet that this development has a frontage.
Well, the question is what's the speed of the car coming to the intersection?
Yeah.
Is there enough distance up the road to see the oncoming car in both directions for a car pulling out and a car stopping because of a car pulling out? Intersection and sight distance.
Yeah.
That's measured by the traffic engineers. If it's a problem, they'll tell us.
Yep. So I think some of those waivers that they might need could be a real issue with some of the traffic.
I'm not sure any of the waivers, because I haven't read the list yet, have anything to do with traffic mitigation. But I got to tell you, because everybody brings up traffic, I've been doing this a long time, and I've never seen a traffic study deny a permit. They could, because it's a situation where it's an A, B, C, or D, and that makes the difficulty of the traffic that's going on. But they can mitigate it. They'll come up with some way to mitigate it. Like I said, I've never seen a project, and Jeff's been around a long time behind shaking his head, never seen a project denied because of traffic. And this is a state highway out here, so we don't have a lot of say in what goes on out in the road.
The town has no jurisdiction over Route 140 if it's still a state jurisdiction. So
Yes.
some state highways are now local jurisdiction, but if that stretches
The
government.
donut shop was with the state highway.
Well,
Little
Lewis Street, not Lewis, yeah, Lewis Street. That's where the state highways go. So, anyway.
And I know we've talked a lot tonight, but I guess it'd be good to get an indication on how the board is leaning in terms of the 3 options that have been presented tonight.
Okay. Not ready to make a decision now. All right. Too early for traffic. What should we talk about next?
I think we should, now that Joe's on board.
Well, he will be as soon as we get the check.
Right, so Joe will work with Alan and Major to pick a topic that we're ready to have a thorough discussion about, and that will be the topic of the next meeting. If there's a traffic engineer that we need to hire, that's not the topic, because we got to get him to work.
Yeah.
You've got Jeff Dirk, right?
Yes, yes, sir.
For those of you who don't know the name, Jeff is a fine traffic engineer, so.
Is that from, does he work for Vanessa or something?
Yeah, he's running it now.
Usually these guys come in, they hire the top traffic consultants, and Vanessa's one of them. So we have to get we work with Joe. Joe's got a traffic consultant that he uses, and he's probably like the second best, so that's the best we can get, because they already got the first.
It's my job sort of to choreograph the meetings with your civil engineer so that we have a productive evening of it. We don't want people not knowing what's going to happen next. So that all happens more or less behind the scenes.
All right, our next scheduled meeting is April 24th, unless we do something beforehand within the next 13 days. And all we'd have to do for that, Mark, would be to give 48 hours notice if we wanted to call it.
Yeah, if you wanted to post a meeting between now and April 24th, did you say?
No, April 24th is way past.
I understand that, but if you wanted to call a meeting
Right,
before
we
April
wanted to call a
24th, you have to
meeting before
post
that.
it in 48 hours in advance.
So we'd have to give 48 hours notice.
Right.
Does the applicant have to be here if we did that?
There's nothing in the regulation that requires that, but I would think as a courtesy, it would probably be a good idea.
Okay. Anyway, at this point, you're going to get us a check, so if we need to hire the consultant, we'll do it. And,
Just a question, Mr. Chairman, for Casey, can that just be done by an online link and done electronically? Or do we drop off a check? Can the payment be made electronically?
I don't know. We have trouble in Franklin with holding on to checks, and they disappear, so I don't know. So maybe you ought to, overnight a check or something.
Yeah, we'll send a check.
I mean, when we get it, it'll go to Casey, I would hope, anyway, we're gonna go to Gus anyway.
Yeah, we'll
When the
send-
check comes in, I'll make arrangements to get, the consultants on board. I mean, Mark showed up for me as a favor, but he'll put it in the bill, I'm sure, but.
Could I?
Well, I'm planning, we got a busy agenda on the 24th, and I thought that I could get it out to there, but we put a lot of things off so that it didn't land tonight for the first meeting. So I'm looking at May 8th as the next one after that we could possibly get, or you're looking at June 5th. It's up to you guys.
May 8th.
May 8th, okay.
I could just ask one question that's kind of going to drive a lot of other pieces for the civil design, seem to be a lot of discussion about the parking ratio.
Yeah.
That's something we really need to discuss up front.
Well, I would think you'd want to get that out of the way, the parking.
Yeah.
Like I said, I know, I've been here a long time. We approve certain things for certain projects. And I think, our consulting engineer, I asked him today what the ratio was, he remembered what the one was grocery, it was 1.74.
1.74?
Yeah, so, and we did another one that was like almost 2, and that wasn't even, that was market rate, so I don't know what the westerly was, I forget how many parking spaces were down there, but I'll try to look it up. But anyway. All right, with that being said, I'll entertain a motion to continue this until May
Mr. Chairman.
8th at 7:30.
Motion made and seconded.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, none.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Give it to Casey over there. Not the one on the left.